Hello, Bruno.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sorry we get a little bit in your time, but we start.
It's all okay. It's all okay. No problem. Shall I start right now, or
yes, you can start.
Forcing a short pause?
You're welcome.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Perfect. So thank you. Just sorry. Then I'm here again. So thank you for inviting us to this seminar. So my name is Bruno, and I'm going to talk to you about the Belgian specialty malt. Just excuse me a second, because I have a little software issue. It's going to be okay. So, I'm talking to you today on behalf of Castel Malting. So Castel Malting is still a family-owned Belgian malting plant in Belgium. I think, is it normal that the slideshow is it's too wide? Is the size normal from your end?
Hi Bruno, I'm taking for the website, and that's why it is so large.
What if I would try to share it? So from my end, then
you can try.
The problem is, what I see is quite strange. I'm sorry, but
do you want to make a pause and to try from your computer?
Yeah, if you can stop, I will try from my end.
Okay,
Yes.
I will stop. Okay. No
Hopefully
problem.
better. Sorry about that.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I don't see the option. Is it better this way from your end?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah. Thanks.
There we are. It's looking better. Okay. I start again. So I was talking about then Castel Malting, which is still a family-owned malting plant in Belgium. Just to fly over this and to mention a few figures, there are more than 3,000 breweries in more than 140 countries in the world which are using the malt from Castel Malting. It's important to explain that Castel Malting is very focused on the specialty malt, even though Castel Malting is also providing some base malts. The specificity of this company is that it can propose now more than 100 types of base and specialty malt, meaning that, considering that of course you can mix different types of malt in your beer, you have almost infinite possibilities in terms of beer flavor coming in color and the haze, etc., coming from the malt. We are here going to review a little bit the range of malts that can be used, and probably more interesting, try to give some ideas on which type of beers you can brew with which type of malt. I don't have time to stay too long on each slide, but still a short overview of what happens at Castel Malting. we have to see that 94% of the barley is coming from France, 6% from Belgium. And so it is very local because Castelmoerting is very close to the French border on the Belgian side. The malting plant, even though it's one of the oldest still working on, has seen many technological upgrades these years. For instance, here you can see a picture of a very specific unit, which is called the Castel 8000, which has some roasting facilities, but also a very specific design to prepare the caramel malts. I'm going to focus a bit more on the caramel malts later on in this presentation. An interesting technology breakthrough also that we can see at Castelmoerting is the electrical roaster. So what you can see on this picture is actually two towers made of spiral, and there is an electrical heating in the spirals, and with vibration the grain is going up in the system, and while it's traveling in the spiral it's going to be roasted. So this installation has a very high flexibility in terms of roasting time, roasting temperature, etc. It's also very interesting because it has a very homogeneous roasting along the batch, because each grain remains approximately for the same time in the system. So the characteristic of the malt is not anymore an average, but really the characteristics of each grain. For instance, it's also very flexible because you can decide to go faster in the loop, so then the turnover time in the system is shorter, or opposite, you can go slowly, obviously, to have a longer time. You can choose the temperature, and you can choose to chain the two spirals. So you can come out from the first one and then go to the second one and enlarge the residence time. Okay, that was just to give you a little bit of views of what happens on the plant. Now let's focus on the product, because at the end of the day, this is what is the most interesting for you guys. So what are we talking about when we are talking about malt? The malt actually is going to bring a quite important quantity of characteristics to the beer. Okay, if we see on this picture, I don't know if it's go. Just excuse me. No, there we go. There we go. So first of all, you can think about the taste. Okay, each malt has a taste, from almost not malty to very malty, of course, but there are many other characteristics, like the color. Of course, everybody thinks about the color when we are talking about malt. Of course, all of you guys are very familiar with the EBC index for the malt color. But you have also the robe, which is the characteristics of the color mixed with the haze that you can have in your beer coming from the malt. You can have the same color index with different haze types. So it also will be important to keep in mind when you are going to choose the malt you are using. The body. So the body is, of course, the full palate that you can have in your beer when you drink it, and different types of malt can enhance or reduce the body of the beer that you're going to drink. So the aroma is combined, of course, with the taste. So the aroma, as you know, is what you have in the back of your mouth and in your nose with the retro-olfaction. The viscosity. The viscosity of your final beer is depending on the malt. As we are going to see, for instance, the caramel malts are going to drastically increase the viscosity of your beer. Of course, when I say drastically, it's not going to be oil, but it has a significant impact on the viscosity. And for instance, the viscosity has a significant impact on the foam stability of the beer. Bitterness. Okay, when we talk about bitterness, everybody thinks about the hops, but the malt can influence also quite importantly the bitterness of your final beer. Aftertaste. What is not really the taste, but what comes after. For instance, the harshness is the most obvious aftertaste you can have in your beer, and the harshness can be very linked with the type of malt that you are using. The foam stability, I have mentioned it already, is also linked with the malt that you're going to choose. For instance, the caramel malts that I have mentioned earlier are really influencing a lot the foam stability of your beer, which is, as you know, something that you like. Of course, a beer is much more sexy if it remains with a foam head for a long time than if it collapses immediately. So let's take a look on the different types of malt that we can have. First of all, we can talk about the kilned malt. What does it mean? So it's the classical process of making a malt. So you soak the grain into the water for 24 to 48 hours. You have the germination for a time, depending on what the malting plant can do. So can range from 5 to 7 days. And then you have the kilning. It's important to mention here that the difference between a big industrial malting plant and a craft one is the time that you can allow for the germination. Castle malting is allowing a sufficient time for all the batches of malt to have a very important modification level. And it's very important for the result that you're going to have in your brew house. So it's just a question of 1 or 2 days more, but it changes everything in the characteristics of the malt. So let's go back to the kilned malt. So the kilning, of course, as you know, is when you are heating the malt after the germination. And depending how high in temperature and how long you're going to kiln, you're going to have different types of malt. So here's a very quick summary of a few kilned malt. Of course, there are many types of malt. I told you there were more than 100 available now. But here you have a quick overview of the malt which are only kilned. And you can see it ranges from 13 for the Munich Light up to 250 for the Coffee Light. These malts are only kilned. So you start from the barley, you steep, so you soak the grain into the water, you have the germination, and you have the kilning. According to how long and how warm you're going to kiln, you're going to have a range of colors in the malt. So I remind that we are talking here only about the specialty malts. Of course, the base malts, which are the Pilsner malt, the Vienna malt, the Pale Ale malt, are all of them also kilned, but slightly, and they're very low in color, ranging from 2 to 8. Here we are talking about the specialty malt. So the Munich Light is actually light in color, lighter than the Munich. Munich is classically 25 EBC. And the characteristics of these malts is going to bring some golden color and some grainy flavor. So we are not yet talking about something roasted, coffee, smoky flavor or whatever. It's just going to bring your beer to something which is warmer in color, because more orange and it gives a more warm feeling, but also in the taste, thanks to this kind of bready, malty flavor. These malts are still active in terms of enzymatic activity, less than the base malt, of course, but you can go up to 60% in the mix. If we continue kilning, then we are bringing the malt to something which is quite reddish. So you have the Melano Light, which is at 40 EBC, and the Melano, which is at 80 EBC. These malts now don't have much enzymatic activity. They are kilned to higher temperatures, so definitely the enzymes are destroyed during the process, well, most of them. And at least 10% of a Melano in your beer is going to bring you something very reddish, a very nice beer in color, without bringing the roasting taste. So the Melano name comes from the melanoidin, which are created, during the kilning at a higher temperature, so up to 130 degrees C. Then if we continue, we have the abbaye. So the abbaye is going really to bring the cooked bread taste. We also talk about nuts or dry fruits. So this is something which is, as the name speaks for itself, is going to help you a lot to make the typical abbaye beers. You know that Belgium is very famous for all these specialty beers, and especially the abbaye beers. So this is something which is really going to bring you some depth in your beer, really some body, but without being too black or too roasted. It also brings a little bit of bitter flavor. If we continue, then we reach up 100 EBC and the Chateau Arôme. So Arôme stands for aroma in French. So now we are talking about something more amber, some more dark. And it's going to start bringing some bitterness, but a bitterness that, I know it sounds paradoxal, but a bitterness which is still quite smooth. Okay? And we continue. Then we reach the crystal, which is 150 EBC. So as you can guess, more color, more bitterness, but these ones are still only kilned. If we continue with temperature, so up to 200 degrees C, then we have the coffee light, which is 250 degree EBC. So now you really have a flavor. So cafe stands for coffee, as you can guess, and it stands for itself that it brings some coffee taste to the beer. 10% is more than enough to bring the coffee taste to the beer. And then you have the coffee, which is at 500 EBC. So as you can guess, even more stronger character compared to the previous one. Now I would like to focus a little bit more on the specialty caramel malt. It's important to really explain what a caramel malt is. Caramel is not a question of color. Caramel is really a question of process. What happens with the caramel malt is that you start from the barley, you still have the steeping, so you soak the grain takes a lot of water, so it goes up from 15% of water up to 50, 55. Then you have still the germination, and after germination you get what is called the green malt. So far it's absolutely normal compared to the kilned malt. The green malt is exactly the same. But what is going to happen now is that there is something missing on the slideshow, sorry, that between the green malt and the roasting, you are actually going to keep the green malt for a certain time at a temperature ranging from 60 to 70 degrees centigrade. Why? Because you have to figure out that every kernel is still full of water, and if you bring it to the temperature when the enzymatic activity is strong, so between 60 and 70, then you are going to turn every single kernel into a mash tun. So every grain of barley or of green malt, as it is now, is going to be a conversion vessel. And you're going to turn the starch into sugar straight into the grain. And you're going to bring the grain into what is called the glassy state. And sorry, and then you have plenty of what you may call sugar in the grain. Of course, this product is not stable as it is. If you keep it wet, it's going to rot. And now you're going to dry it. And you're going to dry it into a roasting drum. And according to how deep you dry it, the temperature and the time, into some roasting drums, you're going to have different colors of caramel malt. And if you see in this spreadsheet here, you have the Caraclère, which is at 9% EBC. So 9% EBC is comparable to the pale ale malt. It's in the same range, but it's completely different. So it's not going to color your beer, but it's going to bring some typical caramel, which has been created in the roasting drum. You have to understand that the caramelization process is different from the Maillard reaction that happens in the kiln. In the kiln, you have the Maillard reaction, which is a reaction between a protein and the sugar. The caramelization is a reaction between sugar and sugar. So the sugar are binding together and they are creating the caramel, which has some characteristics common with the sugar, but which is mainly not fermentable. So it's not going to be fermented in the beer. The caramel malt, it's important to understand, has almost no, let's say no enzymatic activity left, but it's going to bring the smoothness of the caramel to your beer. Moreover, as I have stated before, it's going to enhance your foam stability. Why? Because increasing the viscosity and creating some bounds between the bubbles in your foam, and the foam stability, it is enhanced because the foam is stronger, I would say, because you are binding each bubble with bridges linked with the typical characteristics of the beer, which contains some caramel malt. So what do we have? We have the Caraclère, as I have stated, so which is the palest caramel malt, so only 9 EBC. And if you bring this into your beer, you're going to still have a light in color beer, but a full palate to your beer. It's going to be something rounder, warmer in the beer. So if you want a very dry beer, this is not your friend. If you want a beer which is balanced with full palate, a little bit of caramel of Caraclère is going to enhance your balance. But we can roast the grain more. So if we go to a higher temperature, we have the Cara Blonde, which is at 20 EBC. So now we are in the range of the Munich that we have mentioned earlier. If you use this instead of the Munich, you're going to have some golden, light orange color, same as the Munich, but a more round beer with a more full palate beer. Then we have the Cara Ruby. Cara Ruby is in the same range of the Melano that we have seen before. So it's going to bring some typical reddish color, but also a full palate to your beer and a good foam stability. I'm co-owner of a craft brewery in Belgium, and one of our main beer is a red one, and I use the Cara Ruby in it, and it's really easy to drink beer, even though it's more full palate, but it's a more complex beer. So you can really do some red ales, some kind of Irish red beers also with this beer. And if we continue, we have the Cara Gold. So the Cara Gold is 120 EBC. So you know the story now. So more color, but now you start to have a little bit of the roasting of the caramel of the roasted caramel flavor, but without the harshness, without the smoky stuff, without the really roasted character. I will have to go a bit faster, but we have the special Belgium, which is at 300 EBC. So now we are talking about serious color additions thanks to this malt, but no harshness. So you will have a nut and plum flavor, a malty taste, a lot of color, but no roasting flavor. The specialty of this malt is that it's roasted twice. Not to burn it too much, it's roasted once, then cooled down, and then roasted again. So, Castel Malting has developed some new caramel malts, but the idea is the same. So you have different ranges of color. So you have a lot of possibilities, and even a one which is darker. So you will have the characteristics of the Cara, which is the roundness of the beer, the foam stability, but also you are now going to reach the coffee flavor that you have also from the coffee malt, which is only kilned. So I will just fly over these because I have not enough time left. I'm sorry, but you got the point. It's the same idea. Now we could also roast the malt without making the Cara process. We can make some base malt, okay, some Pilsner malt, and we can roast it. So instead of increasing the temperature in the kiln, we are going to kiln it light and then we are going to transfer it to the roasting drum. What is the purpose of that? Now the purpose is to have the roasting flavor. So you can see we can roast a very little bit and then do the biscuit, but then again we can continue, you see, up to the black, which is 130, the chocolate, which is 1000 EBC. So now we are talking about serious color and roasting flavor. And we can even roast the raw barley. Okay, so we can take the barley, not even going through this pathway, but go directly from the barley to the roasting drum. This is what is used to make the Guinness. Guinness uses 10% of roasted barley, for instance. So I will not have time to read all this, but I guess you can have the presentation from the organizing committee of this webinar. But as you can guess, the higher the EBC index, the higher the roasting characteristics of the malt. Okay. So now we can also malt some other types of grain. Well, the most famous one is the wheat. So we can make malts out of wheat, but nothing says that you can do only pale wheat malt. So you can do the malting process with wheat and also increase the heating. So either a higher kilning or roasting, okay? And then you can have the wheat Munich. So it's going to bring you a color which is comparable to the Munich barley malt, but with also some specificity of the wheat malt. What is the wheat specific for? It has higher protein content than the barley. So it's going to enhance your foam stability too. It's going to bring some smoothness to the beer. It's going to bring some haze if it's, well, mainly if it's not malted. To be honest, if it's malted and then roasted, the haze is not going to be so obvious. But then you can have the wheat crystal, 150 EBC, same as the barley crystal. And you can have the chocolate. So something in the range of 900 EBC. So you're going to have the coffee, bittersweet chocolate flavor. And why not malting some other types of grain? Why should we stay on the barley and the wheat? We can malt the rye. We can malt the oats. We can malt the spelt or the buckwheat. Why would we do this? The rye has a specificity of something which is quite spicy. You know, it bring some things a little bit more complex, not acidic, but something that you could call sharpness to your beer. So the malted rye can be used. Just to mention it, the unmalted rye, so the raw rye, can also be used in a beer. But if you have ever tried this, for sure you know that lautering this is a nightmare. The malted rye is easier to lauter. Then we can also use oats. So oats, remember, has a very low diastatic power, but the oats typically brings some silkiness to the beer. So something that really makes your throat more sweet and silky when you drink the beer. The spelt. The spelt is something I use also in some of our beers. The spelt has a spicy flavor. It's something very interesting, especially for the seasoned beer. So the seasoned beer is something very typical from Belgium as well, and it has the specificity of being, you know, a little bit spicy, peppery, and the spelt helps for that. Buckwheat. What is buckwheat famous for? Mainly because it has no gluten. So buckwheat is interesting for the gluten-free beer. Remember that the buckwheat has no diastatic power, so you have also to compensate for that. Organic malt. Not The complete line of the malts from Castel Malting are available on organic version, but way enough to make a lot of organic special beers. Just let's review that quickly. Natuur is the word for nature, obviously in English. Natuur is the word which is used at Castel Malting to mention that the malts are organic. So every time you will see nature after the name, it means that it's organic. So as you can see, you have plenty of organic possibilities. So starting from the Pilsen, of course, but then you see you have the 3 base malts, so Pilsen, Vienna, and Pale Ale. But you have the most important ones, so the Munich Light, the Munich, Abbaye, Crystal. You can have some Cara, also Nature. So you can make a complete organic beer using the specificity of the Cara malt. You can have the roasted ones, like the chocolate. You can have the black, so you can even have the roasted barley. So considering all these, you have way enough choice to make every type of beer you would like into an organic perspective. You can have also, I didn't mention that, but you can have also the peated malt. So, you know, with this very, phenolic compound, so the whiskey or smoky flavor. You can have them in a classical version, but you can have them also in organic. So you can make a smoky beer or whiskey beer on a complete organic version too. You can have some wheat. So you can have some, as I have mentioned, other types of cereal which are malted, but starting from organic version of the raw grain, and then you get the organic version of the malt. You can also have the chit wheat. I didn't mention the chit wheat. I guess you know what it is, but chit malt is a malt that has been very, very shortly modified. So the germination is very short. So it's somewhere between the raw grain and the malt. So I had to fly over a few of these slides, but I hope you get the point that you have plenty of possibilities. It's important to mention that Castel Malting has a very interesting application to see all the characteristics of the malt. You can find a lot of recommendations for recipes. So if you say that you want to brew a certain type of beer, you will have the list of the recommended malts for this beer. By the way, you will also have the recommended hops and yeast for that. Castel Malting supplies hops and yeast locally, even though their main business, of course, is to malt and sell the malt. So our colleagues at Castel Malting are always available for any kind of question, recommendations for the types of malt you have to use for a specific beer. But please remember that everything you will find on the website is well done in terms of recommendation. Everything you will see is the starting point. It's not something that you have to follow at the %. It's something to give you a starting point, and you are the person who is going to create your own recipe. If you have any questions starting from this recipe, please don't hesitate to ask them on the website of Castel Malting. If you have any question on what I have said just right now, and I will have to stop because there are other people behind, please, I hope we have a few minutes for that. Thank you very much for listening.